Good afternoon, everyone. Shall we all stand for the national anthem? Please have your seats. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, again, and welcome to a conversation with student leaders, lessons from student leadership life. I am delighted to be here, and I hope you are too. I'm really happy to see so many of our student leaders here this afternoon and the groups, and of course, many of them, because you have classes, they have classes, they're joining online. So welcome again. My name is Jainarine Deonauth, and I'm the Director of the Department of Events, Conferences, and Communication, and it's indeed an honor to be chairing this program today. Before we go into the program, please allow me first to recognize our distinguished Vice-Chancellor, Professor Paloma Mohamed Martin, his Excellency, United Nations Development Program Resident Representative Gerardo Noto. I hope I've gotten the pronunciation correct. Colleagues of UG, student leaders, student groups, and of course, those joining online. This conversation here today is part of a series that university started some time ago, and it's meant to really build the capacity of our students, student groups, student leaders, because this is important, we believe. This is important, and you would agree with me, coming to university is not all about academics. It is about building a well-rounded individual. It's about developing those skills that you need to be successful citizens and to be successful leaders for the greater good, to serve really for the greater good. And that is the focus of what we are doing as part of this series. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce our distinguished Vice-Chancellor, Professor Paloma Mohamed Martin, to bring opening remarks. Thank you. Please clap your hands. Give her a round of applause as she comes.
Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, Ms. Balram. Thank you so much for being here as student leaders and I think soon to be national and international leaders. Of course, Dr. King, Daniella King, our dearly beloved and very hardworking assistant registrar, senior assistant registrar for students' welfare, Jai, members from DECC, Joelle, and others online. A couple of months ago, I had the European Union ambassador when he first came to the country, which is about a year or so ago. In my office, he was asking about students, student life, and so on. And I was telling him that we were soon to have, which was in April, a student election. And that one of the things that we were looking for was support to help to run that election off. And I'll tell you why. When we were in COVID, we actually did the first ever national elections voting campaign that was done entirely online. And what we saw in that period was about a 200% increase in participation. So whereas we would have had about 6, 7, 800 students face-to-face voting in that year. Well, of course, COVID, everybody was home and looking for things to do, so maybe that might have been part of it. But we saw about 2,000 students participating in that year, and that, of course, was a conversation that we had. What would help to elicit participation, and then we talked about this particular thing that I am personally interested in, and I have to say that it was a student who kind of brought me to thinking about this about 2 years ago. A very wonderful young man, a wonderful student leader. But one Sunday, there was a long, day long back and forth between he and I on WhatsApp. And that conversation was about what a leader was about. So the context was that we had two trips to be given, and I wanted to keep one of them for the general student population, and I was given one to the student societies to for them to decide who should go. And he said that he wanted both, one for himself and one that he should decide who would the other person should go. And I said to him, "No, that's not how it's supposed to be. You are representing a small percentage of the students, and the rest of the students should have an opportunity." And we went back and forth all day. And we went back and forth because he said to me, "I am the leader. I must have some perks." And at that point, I was like, whoa, wait a second. What is it about leadership that we are missing, in this university, that a student who is so brilliant and so lovely could say this to me with absolutely no compunction at all? So at that point, I knew that we had to do more about cultivating leaders who understood a lot more about different type of leadership styles and reasons why people lead and so on. And so for me, I started working with the group I call the servant leaders in the university, because that's what I think I am. And that's what I think we need many more of, because those people who are there to serve others and who understand that they can still get to their highest potential, they could still earn, they could still be rich if they want, they can still do all these other things, but they have to be able to understand this type of leadership. So it is in that vein that I did speak to some of the diplomats in the community in Guyana. And out of that came this wonderful series that was produced at the Marriott Hotel, in which they kind of perfected this idea of an in-depth look at different type of democracies around the world. Many of you might have been there online and so on. And then, of course, the big elections, except for one, were finished, and then that series ended. I think the fun did ended, but His Excellency here, who is you'll find is quite interesting, quite ebullient, quite energetic, quite dynamic, reminded me that I had promised him that when the students were back out, we would be able to engage with them. He would be able to engage with them. And I thought, great, since you have an election coming up and so many of you are involved in the election, meaning, let me clarify which election I'm talking about. Student election on the campus, not the national election. Our student elections on the campus, which are coming up at the end of this month. We thought that is a good time for him to come and speak to you about his own very interesting life as a student leader not so long ago. And also what else he has learned and what else he can share with you this afternoon. Now, he's really busy, so we really are thankful, Excellency, that you could find the time. And of course, you're here after work, Ms. Balram. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. I hope and know that this is going to be a wonderful experience. And please remember, being a servant leader is not the only type of leader you could be, but please consider it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor. And of course, the University of Guyana is very fortunate to have at its helm a visionary leader in the name of Professor Mohamed Martin herself. So thank you very much, VC, for bringing that bit of background information as to how all of this started. So we're going to get right to it now. I know you're eager to hear from the main speaker. And please, this is meant to be a very interactive session. Of course, His Excellency will do the main presentation, and we expect you to engage with him as much as possible, ask as many questions, and make notes as you as on your questions, of course. So let me quickly introduce His Excellency. Mr. Gerardo Noto was appointed UNDP resident representative in Guyana and Suriname in July 2023. He is a citizen of Argentina and Spain. His Excellency Noto has dedicated more than 30 years to public service, human development, democratic governance, conflict management, citizen participation, and inclusion, particularly as it relates to youth, women, indigenous peoples, and minorities. He has worked in UNDP since 2002, serving in various senior capacities around the world in the UN system. Prior to joining the UN system in 2002, Mr. Noto worked in the field of international relations and international cooperation in two provincial governments, the province of Mendonça, 1989 to 1991, and Buenos Aires, 2000 to 2001, and the National Senate of Argentina, 1993 to 1995. Two regional organizations, CELA Latin America Economic System and Ibero-American Secretariat in 2008. He has also lectured at three Argentine universities on international relations and negotiations. His Excellency Noto obtained his master's degree in law and diplomacy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy from Tufts Harvard University in 1993 and a bachelor's degree in political science and public administration from the University Nacional de Cuyo in Argentina in 1988. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Gerardo Noto, who will deliver the main presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good evening almost now. It's really a pleasure to me to be at the university. It has been a while. I graduated from mine and then from my graduate studies, but it's always really during my long career, I try to be linked to knowledge creation and academic institution as much as possible. Interesting that you hear my career, my trajectory, more than 30 years, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk to something that happens to me while I was a student, and I think that it would be interesting story to hear and to share with you. And definitely, I totally agree with Dr. Paloma because for me, leadership and serving people is the same thing. Not casually. I've joined the UN and served in many countries and some at war like Iraq, Libya, and different capacities around the region, and definitely that's the way it's defined. But I would say that a lot of what I learned about leadership it happened in that early experience of the first president of the student council in my university. But to talk about that and the lesson that I learned from that experience, I would like to try to that's the only thing I ask is try to travel well down south. I was born in Argentina. Now I live in Spain. I'm national citizen of both countries. But in the middle of Argentina, which is a very long country, it's 5,000 kilometers from north to south, we have all the different climates. In the middle side, which is the temperate, where Buenos Aires is on the east, and then the main city is Rosario, Córdoba, and on the west, closer to Chile, is Mendoza. And that region, originally during colonial time, was named from the indigenous name of Cuyo or Cuyum, which is a little bigger than Mendoza and really relate to 3 provinces in the West. So the university, created in 1939, it received that name. In Argentina, the most traditional university comes from the colonial times. It was really in Cordoba, linked to the Jesuit company, one of the few ones. There were not many universities during Spanish control of the region. There was one in Charcas, which is now Bolivia, and basically very few. They were not very encouraging people to. The elites used to go to Salamanca to study, and the elites that play a significant role in independence, most of them studied there. But anyway, the interesting thing is that that was a dynamic university created in mid 20th century, and in 1950. Sponsored by the government, there was the creation of the first school of political studies in the country. And that evolved into the political and social sciences faculty, where I studied during the 80s. So this story, you were not around. You probably not even were thinking on your parents' heads, but I think the experience is valuable. And the other thing is that I also would like to travel you in time, because we are talking 40 years ago. During the second part of the 70s, or during the whole 70s, but particularly the second part, there was in the early 80s, there was a very dark time in Argentina. It was under a very bloody military dictatorship. I grew up in that space, but I can tell you it wasn't nice. So I really value democracy more than a lot of people that usually, unfortunately for them, it's a normal thing, because it's really tough, and I seen very bad things, very very bad things happen in that country. So I did my during that time. The dictatorship started when I started my high school. So all my adolescent year, my youth was under that very oppressive regime. And then at that time, there was military mandatory service. You had to go to the army or the navy, whatever it is you are located. And I was a soldier during the Falkland War. And I was posted in the western border with Chile. There was some tension, so they decided not to move the troops from there. But if the war has lasted a couple more weeks, in reality, we were preparing to be deployed to the islands. So, and the whole war was senseless, because you don't fight a war against a NATO member country. But it was the dictatorship was really pressured. There were massive mobilization. That it was a lot of politics involved in that decision, but it cost many lives. But at the end of the day, it implied the end of the dictatorship no longer after that. So there was a transition process, and at the end of 1993, there were elections. Since then, democracy is a reality. With it's up and down, but it's been a reality in Argentina, as in most of the countries in the region. Interesting. I started my university study in 1982, and in 1993, when we were moving into this transition, of course, during the dictatorship, student council were forbidden. There was no possibility of any kind of trade unionism. There's still some underground movement, but not with the students. So in political science and social science, there was a lot of people more involved in politics, and definitely people concerned about political and social issues. So around mid-time that year, we started to discuss about the students involved to create a student council. And so we discussed, we created the statute, we created the rules, and we ran the elections. And so the elections, and then in that moment, I was involved, and there were two groups of students, well, more than two groups, but the two main groups related to the two main political parties. A student, affiliated to that particular party. So there was a lot of people not really directly involved in a political party. So we created, I was part of that process, an organization to represent us. It was called Democratic Independent Student Association. And I was in second year. So I had colleagues from third year, 4 year. My career was 5 year career. So I thought, the candidate might be one of the older ones. But I was pushed by circumstances because I was, in a way, very much involved. So people said, you started this, you have to go all the way. And so I was the candidate for president. There was a 9-member council. It had proportional representation. And so the election was like a week before the presidential election. We won more than 50%. So we got 5 councillors, the president, the vice president, and the main secretaries. And there are 2 for each of the other groups. Interesting, I was sharing with Nadira that my opponents at that race is the current governor of Mendoza, a person that I knew because we did the military service together in the same regiment, even in the same unit. And his second mandate, he was very successful. He's been mayor of part of an important city in the province twice. Then he was governor before. He was national representative, and now he's the second term as a governor. And I remember, as an anecdote, he was having an interview with the national newspaper, and this was like not long ago when he was in the first governor. And of course, I've seen him after that where he was governor. And then he said that the only person that beat me on an election was Gerardo Noto, which is true because he never lost an election with important ones. But he was still had that thorn, that was the only time that he lost was with me. And the other guy was local legislature, national representative. And one of my colleagues, I was the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cusco. That's my study buddy. We studied together. So there was this experience, it developed a lot of capacity of leadership. And then, of course, people take different paths, but the whole experience was really enriching. So, and then we were in the process, after the democracy came back, the universities were intervened by the Ministry of Education because they are national. In Argentina, they are national universities. And so the idea was to reform and try to get rid of all the authoritarian components. Like sociology, you cannot study philosophical, political philosophy and things like that. So we changed the whole curricula, and we as students, and particularly myself, we are part of the committee that really discussed and developed a new curricula. So it was really a possibility to influence things in a way. And also, I remember during my year of my term, was my third year in reality. There was, at that time, access to university was very restricted, or was restricted. So there was examinations. I passed my examination before going to military service. I was number 1 in that process. I graduated also summa cum laude, like the best, average, whatever you call, that thing, the qualification they receive. So one of the things that's also that usually people thought that people doing politics were not good students. And so that's not true. You can be a good student and be very much involved in community services and different things, or you can be a very bad one and not being involved in anything. So one thing doesn't take that. And so in that way, in that regard, we were really proud of, in general, at least the leadership was really good students, and that was also an attractive thing to many people. And the other thing is that a couple of years ago, I was serving in Trinidad, and I received a call from the university. Some researchers were looking for me. They were writing the story of the student movement in Mendoza, in the university. So when you realize you are part of a history book, some time has passed. But very proud, and we have a couple of interviews, and they were interviewing many actors in that regard, and there was, because our student center was the first one. A few days after was the art faculty also went through the process, and later the other. And then, of course, became a common thing. But it was a really pioneer work and very engaging and very, very satisfying. I would say it was an excellent school of democracy. Working with others, creating a group, running elections, interacting with your opposition, making decisions, responding to in the along the way, there was this mobilization asking for liberation of the entry to university, try to get rid of the examinations. And so we also have to lead that process, even though not necessarily was in our direct interest. It was very risky, but still, I have a fight with the dean at that time because of that. But sometimes you have to represent interests beyond your own individual interests. So you are a leader, you are a representative, you influence decision, but they also respond to what people want, what people need, and that's part of that. So definitely a school of leadership, as I say, not only for me, for all the people involved. Not the only thing, but that practice was really enriching. And I would say that many of the things that I applied during my long career in terms of how to lead, definitely in my professional career in the UN, a lot of things I learned in that experience, and it was growing from them. And definitely, as I say, uh, leading is serving. And you have to find a way to be an effective leader, to influence, but also to respond to the demands of the people that you serve. And I think that's one of the most important lessons of that time. I would say I will stop here. I don't want to be a one-sided. No. And then we can engage into. I would like to respond to questions. I also remember during those times of this mobilization and complaints, there was a student assembly, like have 300 students, and it's a very democratic exercise. I was chairing as president of the student council, but in reality was a lot of this multilateral democracy legislative exercises that also was an excellent. How do you manage in a way the different groups, the different concerns, the different demands, and how you try to find equilibrium or things that are more effective and more beneficial to the majority of people. So I would like to open the floor. So any question that you would like to throw at me, so I can share from experience. But as I say, for you that are engaging into this electoral process, I definitely encourage you to really commit to that process, to talk to your colleagues, to your fellow students, to identify what are your goals, what are your desires, and what kind of proposal you want to share with them. Engage them so you can receive support. But the ones that are elected, really be committed to serve. And again, enjoy the experience because it's a long life, really enriching experience. I can say from personal experience. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Excellency. So here is your opportunity. I know many of you are currently in the process of lobbying for support to represent your faculties and so on. So please identify yourselves. You can start with giving your name and which faculty you're from. So who would like to ask the first question?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wesley Donald. I'm from the faculty of SEBI, and I'm running for president of UGSS. So my question to you, sir. Thank you. My question to you, sir, is what made you run for presidency of your student body?
Okay, that's a good one. I mean, the first engagement, I said, we had to create everything from scratch, even to have a rule, to have a statute, to have what were the conditions to identify, I remember that election commission, neutral, so you can control the process. And so I really, first of all, recognize the need to have a student represented, a body represented the students. That was the first thing. So I was engaged more on not thinking that was about to lead this process during the first year. But then again, when we establish the rules, we need to get our representation of the group of people engaged with, as I say, not necessarily engaged directly with politics or political parties, and so we had to create this organization. We have our own internal process. And I really kind of was pushed by my colleagues to say, okay, you were engaged. We really want you to lead the process. And I wasn't totally sure, but at the end of the day, I recognized that it was part and responsibility that I didn't envision at the beginning, but I was happy to take that responsibility. Everything was new, and as I say, I vote first for myself. The process is allowed, and a week later, I worked for the first time for the president and representative of my country. That fortunately, I've been able to do many times, um, even when living abroad. But I think at the end of the day, either as the result of the process or a conviction that I want to lead, I think is not for the perks. But by the way, there weren't any perks. But in general, is when you lead any group, any institution, you have to think what you are looking for. What do you think you can bring to that group, to that institution, to that organization? And that's always the case. Even when you're running an organization or even when in your space of professional life, that having a vision and having a mission is more than just a paper exercise. There is no way you can reach where you go if you don't know where to go. So when you have objectives and goals, then you can bring along other people and you can try to make that a movement or organization to really reach the goal. But I think there has to be a commitment that you want to engage and you want to really serve, and then hopefully being successful and promote what you are looking for, not just you, but more than you. Thank you. Shoot.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Ferdinand. I'm a student of the Faculty of Engineering and Technology. I'm also a lieutenant in the Guyana Defense Force. Um, I like the idea of service, of being a servant. My question is, how did you manage your academic performance with the demands of being a leader in the
How
university?
do you manage
Your academic performance with
economic
academic,
performance? Oh, yeah,
the
sorry.
demands of being a leader in the
Yes,
university.
it was a tough one. I was entering the third year, which in my career at that time was kind of a make it or break it. Like in many careers, you move from the early years. There is a lot of people left behind for many reasons: academic, economic, professional life. So that was one of the things that made me think when I was about to take the responsibility, how much we can manage. And but it was 1 year commitment. And then of course you can continue or not. I stopped at that point. Um, it was tough because at that point I wasn't working. Later in my career I had to work, so that was very difficult to do at that time. But at that time I wasn't working, so I was able to combine the service and also was a group effort. So I have a vice president, I had secretaries, and we split the responsibilities, but still it demands time. So, but for me, it was clear that keeping with my career was fundamental. Um, it implied certain delays because I mean I was able to keep track of the courses, but when it comes there, the system was to do finals where you had to be examined of the whole curriculum. So it's a tough one. So you need time to prepare. You usually do at the end of the year during the summer, which is there on January, February, March. It implies certain delay, but I could manage. I catch up later, but I think it was the and it implies certain sacrifices, of course. I think you had to keep and make an extra effort, and as I say, it may have some impact, but I would say the balance was definitely positive. Where are the ladies?
Hi, good evening. I'm Rahul.
I'm not running for president of UGSS, but I am running for club president of the UG's Geographical Society and faculty rep. My question to you, we're post-pandemic, so what would be your advice for getting people to leave behind their computers, come back to campus, do club activities, be more physically involved? Because being in multiple executive bodies of multiple clubs, whenever we plan stuff, the main issue is low attendance, low participants, and people don't want to come out. So what would be your advice to getting more club participants?
Well, that's a tough one because during my time there was no internet, no cell phone, not many phones either. So at that time it was face to face. You go, you do your classes. So I remember we had spent my case was we had classes from 4 to 9 p.m. So when I start working, I work in the morning, then run across the city, do my classes, and then sometimes you do some meetings in between, activities on the weekend, things like that. I mean, this time, everything is virtual. Um, from even now, many people will follow, which is fine. But I think we had to be innovative. I mean, certain things you had to engage in the virtual space, like was mentioned by the Vice-Chancellor in terms of getting 3 times the voting participation, thanks to you can do it from your phone, you can do it from your. So many things participation takes a different meaning now. I definitely, I'm more into the face-to-face exchange because, as I say, when I used to joke with my Mexican colleagues, at the end of the conversation, when you do virtual, there is no tequila, no taquitos, or whatever you can have. I mean, the for Latin people, and I believe in the Caribbean is the same. The social interaction around music, dancing, food, drinks is part of life. I mean, we don't really conceptualize life, isolated and only. But I think we try to do a mix probably at this time. Try to use this communication, which is wonderful. I can talk to anyone. I talk to my kids. One is in U.S., the other is in Spain. We can do face. It's wonderful. But as I say, at the end of the day, that part of social interaction. So hopefully we can engage more and more people, make things attractive. As I say, music culture is a very attractive thing to try to bring people to physical interaction. And again, try to engage them virtually to see what they motivate them, what it is interesting for them, and that way it may be a way to attract math. But it's not an easy one because people get used to that kind of interaction. But I definitely go for the traditional one. Here.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Charisma Das, currently enrolled in the Master of Public Health program. First and foremost, thank you for sharing your personal experiences with us. And what I took from what you shared is that democracy is very special to you, right? But what might happen in practice is that people are often driven by individual interests. Of course, leadership is something that is applicable at different levels, right? Depending on whatever demographic you're dealing with, you may have one leader, you may have a team that you're going to work with. Now, my question is sometimes the majority might not, mm, they might not want something that is plausible to carry out, to bring into practice, or something that is in the best interests and most efficient solution that will be applicable for everyone.
So you mean that majority doesn't coincide with that, with its best
yes,
to most?
yes.
Okay.
So how would you deal with bridging that gap? Also, there's this thing about proportional representation. Um, how would you prioritize choosing team members considering proportional representation or based off of their abilities to serve in the team? Right.
Okay. first, the dilemma between majority rule and what's best for majority, which is not always the same case. Ask the Americans who they're going to pick for president. I don't know if you saw the debate yesterday. I saw both, though. Very interesting. Look, the first principle of democracy is, and during the history of democracy, there are always this thing that if you don't know how to write or read, you are not qualified to vote. And then you had to have certain amount of money, certain standard, so certain property rights. And the whole history of democracy is about that. How we moved from a very women were not able to vote until the 20th century. So how that process of expanding participation, inclusion, and democracy is a long history of in the world and in each country. So that's on one perspective. The other one is that if you are true democratic, whatever the majority decide is the expression of the popular vote. They may be wrong, but I'm convinced there is nobody to tell the majority that they may be wrong, but you have part of your natural rights to make that decision. That many times and in many countries is not possible. In my own life, I voted for the first time when I was 21. I mean, I could have voted 18, not that long before. But for my parents, most of they were unable not to make a decision to pick the local government or the provincial government or even the national government. So I think that principle of one person, one vote is essential in democracy. And democracy has the mechanism, and democracy is always perfectible, and it has the mechanism that you run for you are elected for something for a certain period of time. So 4 years, 5 years, depends on the country, 6 years, either president, representative. If you don't deliver, if you are far away from what you promised, will happen many times. The citizen, the voter, has the right to vote somebody else. So you are voted out of your position. Many things can happen in between, but also in democracy, we have control mechanism. You have the parliament, you have the executive branch, you have the judiciary. In many ways in which that is play out in reality, but there are mechanisms. But if you go to when you are a leader and you have a certain vision or you have certain program or you have certain initiative, there is an effort to convince people that this is the best way to go. You may be successful or not. And there is always groups, states, they are never homogeneous. If you have two people, you have two different opinions. They can may have coincidences on some issues, but not necessarily in everything. So if we discuss something, now we are here with 50 people. You have to play the small groups. You have to play the champions. Probably not everybody is what you want to see, but probably women are more into it, or certain women, or certain leaders. So you try to grow from a group of champions, and we do in advocacy all the time. The most influential, the better. But you can start small. And in not necessarily you are going to success to convince at least the majority to get the support you need, but definitely that's the way to go. And then there is still something about debates, in which, in theory, I mean, beyond this particular debate that it may or may not impact significantly the outcome of the election, but I think it has it's an element into the whole picture. Discussing, presenting your arguments, and defending your position is something that is very democratic and not always work, but I think it's the way to work. And you asked me something else.
Right. My second question was when it comes to proportional representation,
Oh, yeah.
whether their abilities comes over proportional representation when you're choosing a team.
Well, in electoral system, you have proportional representation and you have fair past the post. We have basically just split the constituencies in which you elect among different candidates, only one is elected. So it's a typical with Mr. System, and then you have different kind of proportional representation. Um, the the proportional representation had the advantage of that you in a body, in a collective body, you have different opinions, different political parties, different groups, and you try to make that representative not only of opinions and vision, but also in terms of groups. You have different ethnic groups represented there, indigenous people, you have gender, you have women. We are moving into parity, still moving there, but there is a lot more representative among women, women represented than 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's a process too. So that give you representation, with not necessarily when it comes to political systems. You have five parties, it's very hard to, particularly in a parliamentary system, it's very hard to manage. So that's why you have system to try to restrict in a way the full proportional representation. It has proportional representation. Sometimes you have a mixed system. Some people are elected based on proportionality. Some people are elected based on territories, and so you have to find the balance between representation and governability. And that's also the story of the world. I mean, you have different things, and different countries try different solutions. Anywhere for some, and not necessarily work for others. But the main difference in political system is presidential, parliamentary, and some mix in between. I think, from my experience in governance, at that time was interesting. I have the luck to get over majority, and I have my majority to make decisions. But I remember that even we didn't use that majority. We tried to convince and try to get consensus. Sometimes was possible, sometimes was not. I mean, we are not managing millions of dollars, of course. We were managing student affairs, but there's still there is always that way to go. So it's not a black or white answer. Yeah. So, but again, and there is no one size fits all. It's really, I've been through many countries awarding governance around the region. I've been in countries at war and with very deep ethnic religion divisions. And so participation and representation and people convinced and feeling that what they need and what they think is represented is very important. Also for governance. But at the same time, you have to have some arrangement that make manageable whatever that body is.
All right, good afternoon. Milton Granum from the Faculty of Social Sciences, and
That's my guy.
okay, and I'm running for president of UGSS.
Oh,
Two questions. How do you deal with a group of persons that you're leading, and there are some persons who have committed the task, but then they have not been pulling those tasks as they have committed? How do you deal with that? Do you have those persons replaced? Do you give it some time? Do you speak to them? And if you if you're giving it some time, how long? How do you maneuver that situation?
welcome to life. Uh, that happen everywhere. In your family, in your group of friends, in your work, in any institution. Oh, I would say, first of all, what I apply in my daily life is clear rules, make people accountable. So you ask for something, you follow up, you expect results. Sometimes they need support that you can provide, some other can support. Maybe you ask something to one person, it's too much for one person. Maybe you have to strengthen that with a team, two or three. Sometimes people don't know how to do things. So you try to, either you or somebody that know, help, to provide technical assistance. That's what we do. The UN is that we do, a big part of what we do, particularly in development. So those are, uh, I would say, ways to strengthen the capacity, the possibilities of whoever has been allocated certain tasks, are able to do. Then there is always the question of responsibility. I mean, if you ask me something and I say yes, I assume that I will be able to do it. If I cannot do it, I can come back to you and say, look, I have this problem. I need some support. I need more time. I need this and that. So there is a bi-directional interaction. At a certain point, and then you have people that don't care, don't deliver, or have a problem or whatever, and then eventually you may have to find somebody else to do. There is not the manual. I mean, it's a lot of like any human interaction, is a lot of communication. Try to understand if it's asking for more time is going to make that happening or not. Experience helps a lot, but I would say being flexible, but at the same time, draw some red lines. I mean, if you know to need something at a certain point and you are approaching the deadline and it's not happening, give some chance, give some support, but at the end of the day, you are committed because you are committed. I mean, you are working with somebody in a team, but your commitment is with somebody else, your institution, your constituency, the people that are expecting whatever you want to provide, like service or projects, whatever is the case. So you have to remind yourself that your commitment is to work as a team, but your ultimate commitment is with people that you serve. And so if the things are not going well, you try different things, but at the end of the day, you are accountable to the people that you serve. So you are the ultimate responsible. Anything happen in my office or in your is your somebody else may do or not do what, but the the buck stops here. I mean, the leader is responsible, ultimately responsible for everything that happens. So you have to react, you have to make changes, you make do everything possible to really make things happen. Sometimes there are external factors that really make things difficult. But again, it's a really, I would say, delicate process. And you learn a lot with experience, but you never stop learning. And you are facing, I've been serving in so many countries with so many different cultures, with so many different challenges, and I'm still learning. I'm convinced I can do a better job, but I try every day. Yeah.
Right. We'll take another question from the floor and then we'll go online. Of course, I'd like to remind those joining online, please submit your questions via the chat. So we'll come to you in a few minutes. So let's go to another question from in person.
Hello, my name is Bomani Babalal, and I am running for SEBI student representative. And I am also the founder and president of the UG Scrabble Club. So something that I would like that I've noticed is that you started something from scratch, and that is something that I did as well. And well, what you did was in a way bigger capacity than what I did. There's still some parallels there, and what my question is what keeps you motivated to keep going with it even though you're coming from scratch? Because even though I have people like Mr. Tom here who's guiding me a lot as an individual, how do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, you said you are the president of the what club?
Scrabble Club.
Scrabble
Yes.
at the game. Oh, okay.
Yes, it's UG's first Scrabble Club.
Okay. I play that sometimes. Um, yeah, it's always. I mean, in general, even if you start from scratch or you come on board with something already happened, you need to move forward, and you always find as a leader challenges. You many times you feel alone, you feel frustrated when things don't go the way you expect or you really need. So there is a lot of inner strength, and I think that strength comes from conviction that what you are doing is worth it. I work in countries at war. Some people ask me, "What are you doing there?" Um, and I say, "Look, I'm convinced that I can make a difference." And in many of these countries, some people say, "But you think there is a solution?" I say, "I'm convinced there is a solution. There is a difficult one. If I were not thinking that, I will not be here." So, I mean, that's an extreme case. But at the end of the day, whatever is your challenge, there is that things. And again, sometimes you need extra support. You need to bring more people on board. You need other things. But always you have to be innovative. To engage people for whatever the activity is. But as I say, you are convinced that that's good, that you like, and you would like to engage with others. So I think that's the way. And whatever is what keep you going, that work for you, I think is good. But every one of us has to have that, and it's a challenge. But hopefully, you can find it, and then that it will keep you going. There is no big manual for that, but I think it's something that everybody will in any thing in life, we permanently run into obstacles and challenges, and that's life, really.
So we have a question. Thank you very much, Excellency. We have a question from our online audience. It's coming from Keena Andrews from the Faculty of Education and Humanities. And the question reads, how do you deal with prioritizing professionalism when leading colleagues or work friends?
With what professionalism?
How do you deal with prioritizing professionalism when leading colleagues or work friends?
The lack of professionalism?
How do you deal with prioritizing
Okay.
professionalism?
What is the conflict? Because they say you have friends. I mean, I imagine the situation in which you work with a friend and you think she or he is not behaving professionally at the level that is required. Okay. I would say in my work life, during all my career, I like to, I'm not the boss. I'm one more. And I hope that my people agree. I mean, I'm the boss because I take responsibility and decision on that. But in terms of access, in terms of accessibility, in terms of interaction, I'm very horizontal. I've always been. And I think for me, it's a very democratic way of dealing or leading. But I think sometimes you work with friends. It happened to me. Sometimes you try to make friends with people with you work. But there is a moment in which you have to be, there always has to be transparent, serious. And as I say, you have a particular relationship or friendship with that person, but it's not just professional value, which is important values, but also, but we are accountable to other people. We're supposed to do something for others, be in education, be in health, whatever is the case. And so at the end of the day, you have to not use, but build on that friendship to communicate in a way that you can be clear that things are not working, that need a change of behavior. And again, it may require support, but it should not be a case that friendship prevents you to do your work because, as I say, it goes beyond your immediate group. It goes to for the one that you serve. Yeah.
Thank you. We have our 2024 talent ambassador in the house, and she's eager to ask a question. So let's give her the chance, please. You can give her a round of applause,
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Tirajata Semple, and I'm currently running for UGS's president as well. And my question this evening is, how do you lead during a crisis, whether it's internal or external? And can you share with us an experience where you had to lead during a crisis, and what did you learn from it? Thank you.
No, I've been in many crises, political. I've been in crisis country, what we call crisis country, the countries either in war or after war with destruction is massive. My best examples are Iraq and Libya. So I was working and they were shooting 2-3 kilometers away. Some people don't take it, but it's a question of training and personality. But crisis, any crisis, even health crisis, family crisis, crisis is about managing expectation and decision on a very constrained time. You have to respond in a very constrained time, whatever that constrained time is. So prioritizing is key. And in crisis countries, time saves lives. So you go for the most effective decision that save more lives. It's a very tough one because sometimes imply that some other people will not, but you need to make whatever you can to save everybody, but most life. So again, that's a extreme case. But whatever is the crisis, there are things that has to be done first, and things that can. Everything is important, but some things are more important than others. In crisis countries, life saving is a criteria that we use. But again, whatever is the most impactful things that you can do in the shorter time, I would say that's a good criteria for managing crisis. And then, of course, you have to analyze the conditions, the resources, what you need, what can be done. But definitely, I would say the more impactful whatever you have in the shorter time, it will generate a more positive outcome. I don't know if it's theoretical, but I think trying to exemplified with the crisis countries. It's very clear to me professionally, but again, in any situation, I think that's a good principle.
Good evening. My name is Meryl McKay. I'm a chemistry major, and I'm running for faculty representative of the natural science faculty. My question, as I listened to the Vice-Chancellor's story on how this leadership series started, and along with how you did something unprecedented in your university years of initiating a student body when it was needed, what is your advice to youths who are interested in leadership or already in leadership capacities to stay grounded in fairness? Yes, that's a question.
That's a good question. I think you can get into the clouds very easily, whatever is the position, and I've seen it. I remember one case, a colleague of mine, democracy came, there was a government, and this person was the secretary of the minister. I know the minister personally, a very, accessible guy, very simple guy. If you don't know he's the minister, you even never thought, The other person, the assistant, it was, even in this case, it was a friend, from before, but suddenly with this position, she or he believed, it was the end of the world. And you can get confused in any situation, even the one that may be not that important, but it's always important. I think, everybody likes recognition. If you do something, you like to be praised for that. And I think that's a natural need, feeling, and it's okay to a certain level. But the thing is, when you are there more for whatever the people say and for this, either for the benefits, either material or theoretical, I think you had to analyze your real motivation. I personally, I think is not the way to go, but it's very easily to go there. So I think one way to do check on that is you can talk to people close to you, and particularly let them know when you are going, too high, because many people don't realize that. And I know in this case I mentioned, I was surprised because, I know that person from before, and suddenly, it becomes a different person, different attitude. So I think checking with close people or people that they may let you know that, I think you are not doing the right thing, it may help. And also being aware that, one of the things in many cases, if you are sick or you have a problem with alcohol, for example, many people don't realize they have a problem. And the first step is to realize that you have a problem. And sometimes you are so into something that you don't know how to, and some people can help you to, in a very effective way, try to let you know that you have a problem. This is in certain cases it kind of being ranked, this glory and fame, but it may be not the most important thing is it may affect your effectiveness as a leader, because you begin to think and assess things how they're going to be positive, to satisfy that need that you are after, than actual, real, sustainable, and effective action for others. Yeah, but it's a good point. It's always a risk that we have to be aware and try to control and analyze, self-analyze, and try to prevent it or correct it if that's the case.
Very much, Excellency. So we have another question from our online audience, and this question is coming from Danielle McCalmont, running for SEBI student rep. It's a two-part question, Excellency. It reads, what advice do you have for effectively leading and managing diverse teams? That's one. And to follow up, how do you incorporate feedback into your role as a leader?
Excellent question. I mean, teams are more and more I mean, always are heterogeneous, but they are more and more diverse, gender, age. I mean, not in your case, you are more or less the same age, but ethnic group, backgrounds. So I think one of what I believe, and I face with that day every day, is try to find synergies into diverse teams that get the best of them. Because being diverse means that different people have different assets and different skills. So one of the good leadership capacity is try to take advantage of that. It's not necessarily easy. Sometimes generate conflict. Sometimes it's difficult to manage. But I think try to find ways. And what I usually apply is, I mean, communication in both directions. Try to communicate clearly what is required, how to work together, provide some support and assistance to do that. And at the same time, listening to the challenges that different people has in a team. Because it may one thing where we are very clear in social sciences or in political sciences, perception, even though it may be wrong, is a fact. I mean, you make decision based on how you perceive the situation. That may be okay, but may be wrong. So perception is a component that you need to take into account. So if the perception is let's say wrong or it's not absolutely clear, you need also to work on the perception and communicate with people to really try to characterize the situation in which it was conducive to more effective teamwork. And the other one was
And to follow up, how do you incorporate feedback into your role as a leader?
No, I think it's fundamental. I mean, how do you check that you are doing the right thing? How do you check that you are being effective? There are some hard evidence in terms of outcome indicators, but a lot of that, and in many situations, what you have is the opinion of others. And if you surround yourself, your C people, yes people, that whatever you do, they say, oh, it's wonderful. It's not a good thing. You have to have people that work with you, support, but have their own opinion. And when they have a diverse opinion or have a critique, being able to listen to and really make correction if that's what you really think. So feedback from people. And I would say feedback from people, not necessarily your inner circle, but the more you go out to your clients, your people that you work for, and listening how they perceive, how they receive whatever you are doing is fundamental. Because you may keep doing the same thing and the impact is not what you expect or what you think is. So feedback, and the more diverse the feedback, also I would say the more positive.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Quite an engaging discussion. So we have room for perhaps 2 more questions and then we'll close the session.
Hello, once again. Right. So this is a question for all of the people that are running for whatever positions.
Communication, it may be different. The language, the use. I like to use data. I use data all the time. I think it's very convincing. For this, you cannot deny hard data. So different resources. Some people use visual tools, but I think whatever it makes you effective in communication is fundamental. And some communication or some situations are easier to manage. Some situations are very difficult. Conflicted situation, very polarized situation. We found that more and more in the world, in the political realm, but also in the social realm. So the more separate the positions are, the more difficult to interact. So as I say, we had to work on communications, and when something is not working, try to see alternative ways. It may not be successful all the time, but definitely communication is something that whatever you do, whatever you can invest in develop your communication skills is definitely a very, very intelligent investment of your time and effort, because you're going to use it everywhere. And life is negotiation all the time with your partner, with your kids, with your parents, with your neighbor, in your company, in your university, in your whatever is the case. Negotiation is all the time. One of my major in my grad school was negotiation. Yeah, I studied with some people that, for example, Vice President Carter for the Camp David negotiation. Also, something happened in the 70s, you were not around. But very important negotiation, the first peace deal for the Middle East that at the end, after that process, Egypt and Israel established relationship. It was the only Arab country at that time with relationship. What happened in a series of negotiations that happened in Camp David, and this person, Professor Fisher, that had the good chance to have classes with Harvard, he was one. So negotiation, as I say, is a never-ending story, and you can always learn, and it's important to invest time to do good communication and as effective negotiation as possible.
All right, I have one other question. How do you maneuver or how do you live a publicly appropriate life as a well recognized or publicly recognized leader? You know, a lot of people think that as a public leader, you certain things you shouldn't do in public or certain things you shouldn't be engaged in at all. So how do you live a life that you might want to live as a publicly recognized leader?
Hmm. More or less the dilemma between the public life and the private life. Hmm. Well, we have one thing in UNDP very important. We have the work-life balance, and I say, what life? Um, no, but seriously, uh, it's a tough one for everyone. I mean, leader probably more because you are exposed, you are a public figure. Whatever you do, even in your private life, is read. Um, I would say I don't live for what the people say. I never live for what people say. It get me into some trouble, of course. But I would say that, I mean, in my case, and probably many other people, I like to be at peace with myself and be genuine, even though it may not like other people. I try to keep some of my life private, uh, but definitely when you are a public figure or you have an institutional responsibility, like representing an organization in a country, whatever you do, it has an impact. So you have to be very careful and be very aware of that responsibility that put an extra charge in a way on what you do or stop doing. But I would say the call is that whatever you do, that I mean, in my case, that I'm okay with that, and I try to keep my private life private, but it's not that easy. It's always a challenge. I have a question before we close. My understanding is that you have election for university president, and then you have election at this time for faculty president. and then you have election for club presidents. So you have different levels, and it's only one is fair past the post. I mean, it's one position, or you have a council and you have like I try to figure it out just to understand a little bit how it works here.
Okay, so the student government system in the university, the president is elected by simple majority. Most votes wins. However, at the faculty level, there is proportional representation. There's a specific, I think it's 1/3. Don't quote me. I don't have the constitution for me. Once you would have received that amount of votes from your specific faculty, then you are elected along with the president to make up the executive council. That executive council serves for 1 year in office. It depends. Well, it's been growing because the university itself has grown. And so we have however many faculties, however many academic units, they are allotted 3 elected faculty representatives each. All right. At the club level, so this happens outside of the UGSS president and executive council. We provide for a number of student clubs and societies, but the system of determining their governance is the same democratic process that we ask that they subscribe to. So they too have elections. It varies from club to club. So like your described council, where you at the time are electing and voting for president, vice president, and so forth. Our executive council, after they've been elected to office, they have internal elections to decide who will be the senior vice president, the junior vice president, secretary, treasurer, and so forth.
Just one question. You run the election, all the election at the same time?
No. We run so that each academic year we have a new council. A new council.
Yeah.
So for the clubs, every year, annually. So
you run for president, university president, faculty president, and at the same time, or is it a period?
So the faculty representatives and president, that's one election. That is upcoming. The various clubs and societies.
It just depends.
Yes, that's variable, but it's up.
How many people, faculties, how many you have? And university president is on one.
Yes.
So 8. So you can 8 plus 1, 9.
8 is 24.
So it's more than
Wait for each faculty.
3 times 8, 24. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's no one.
Yes.
So 24 plus 1, 25. And then the clubs, how many?
We have 92. 92 clubs.
Cool. So almost everybody can be present. Not everybody. And that everything rotates.
Every year, annually.
No, I think it's great.
Yes.
Really like this innovation about voting virtually. I don't know how we control that. But it's great because in order. Oh, sorry. It all expand the participation and engagement of people. So, no, thank you very much. It's been great for me. I'm still remember 40 years ago. And of course, all that happened after that, it's been, life is a learning experience all the time. Hopefully we do better and better, not necessarily always, but it's been a pleasure really to share. It's also a nice exercise. I still can remember, so that's a good sign. Thank you very much. I really wish you have an excellent exercise of democracy and participation with the student elections. Engage, luck for the ones to be elected. Have you ever a women president so far? Not yet.
We've had
At the
two,
faculty
right?
or university.
Yes, we've had 2 in the 61-year history of.
At the university president.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
No, not you.
I'm on the faculty.
University president, which is the vice chancellor, 1. Student society presidents, 2. female, and I don't know how many in the faculty. But the women, the girls have been, the females have been underrepresented. But this year they're stepping up, so that's really
Okay, I really wish you have
yes.
more women
So
representation. It's always very
yes,
important.
but the young men are also doing very well. So it's a very good, healthy competition.
Excellent. Okay, good luck to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity to talk
Yes.
to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Quite an engaging session. I know you have many more questions you wish to ask, so please feel free to engage with His Excellency once the formal session has been closed. Thank you very much, our in-person audience as well as our online audience. You've all been quite good. So give yourselves a round of applause and give His Excellency another loud round of applause for a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Excellency, for sharing so much insights on your own journey and the work that you've been doing in the diplomatic service as well as your life as a student leader. So we are pleased to have to do a presentation now, and I'll ask Senior Assistant Registrar Dr. Daniella King to make the formal presentation, please.
And on behalf of the University of Guyana and all of the students gathered here, I would like to say thank you very much. It's upside down. Oh, thank you very much for making the time to have this conversation with us. We hope so too. Yes? Thank you. Right? With that, ladies and gentlemen, I have a simple task to close our event, our conversation. And according to my supervising officer, I think you would all agree. I was saying that my task this evening is simple, and it's to bring the curtains down on this conversation. And I think you'd all agree the way that my supervising officer puts it. You've all benefited from, was it non-reimbursable technical assistance from His Excellency this afternoon, and a round of applause for him. Today, we've been privileged to hear from His Excellency Gerardo Noto, and I first time pronouncing it right, our resident UNDP country representative, whose insights on lessons from student leadership life have undoubtedly resonated with all of us, particularly the smiling faces of our aspirant president and faculty representatives. His conversation with us today certainly highlighted for all of us the privilege of the democracy that we are a part of. I am really impressed to hear of the role that you played in your own university, carving out a student council. And I would like to say that our students are standing on the shoulders of our own past student leaders. They've always been a part of the fabric of the administration of the University of Guyana, and you are continuing in that tradition. Moreover, in his address to you, His Excellency pointed out that this is no small task that you are taking up, because like him and the first council in his university, this role of student leader is the first and the opening for leadership nationally and internationally. We have had many University of Guyana student leaders go on to serve in our assembly, in industry, in our government, and so forth. President even, very well. So, like our own country representative, His Excellency, this, I am sure you're seeing your future ahead of you. As we reflect on the key takeaways from today's session, I really want to emphasize as well the importance of embracing diverse perspectives and contexts. Now, you may have been wondering, what could I learn from the student experience over perhaps the time divide of the experience of our keynote speaker today, or even the geographic divide, Guyana versus his own context? Now that it is over, we can all agree that our speaker's experiences, while distinct from Guyana and the University of Guyana's context, have highlighted common themes that are universal to leadership, especially student leadership. Despite the varying backgrounds and challenges that are faced by leaders, there are clear threads which connect this role of leading. These include the need for authenticity. This is what was just addressed there. Remaining true to yourselves and to your values, even as you lead. Resilience, overcoming obstacles and setbacks. Failure will be a part of this process of leading, but it is your ability to remain steadfast, notwithstanding. Empathy, working to understand and to connect with others. The issues may not, as His Excellency said in his address to you, may not necessarily be what he was elected on, but it may be what your constituent is passionate about and what they would like you to advocate on their behalf about. So show empathy, both at the council level, but also as you think about the greater good for those who will elect you to office. And last but not least, working collaboratively, because this is certainly not a task that you can do on your own. By recognizing these shared experiences and embracing the richness of our differences, we can all become effective and compassionate leaders. Thank you again, Your Excellency, Gerardo Noto, for your inspiring message and conversation with us and our students today. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor, for conceptualizing this leadership series. This is the first in 16 years of hosting elections for students that in the run-up to the exercise, there's dedicated effort at speaking on the topic of what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to run a government that you can all be proud of at the end of your tenure. I really do wish to see this continue, and I want to thank you for conceptualizing this. I hope that the insights shared today will empower you to become exceptional leaders and to make a lasting impact on your campus and beyond. Ms. Balram, I would like to say thank you for being here this afternoon as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes. Pleased to invite you. You are correct. We gather around food and drink. We have some light refreshments for you at the back. Please don't leave without helping yourselves to some.